I am Allison Canody, the Director of Forest Health and Monitoring for the Maine Forest Service and the State Entomologist. Thank you for your time and attention today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of forest health news from 2021 and early 2022 and an overview of a few additional forest pests. You can find more details about what I will cover on our website, which you can find at maine.gov/forest health. Starting off, the news lineup is beech leaf disease. This disease was first described in the Cleveland Metro Parks about 10 years ago and had only recently been found in New England. In May, landowners on a regular walk through their woodlot noticed the symptoms of beech leaf disease and reported it to the Maine Forest Service. The disease is associated with a nematode which lives inside the leaf, and presence of the nematode was confirmed both through microscopic examination and genetic material. By the end of 2021, beech leaf disease had been found in 4 Maine counties. It is widespread in the mid-coast and was found in the experimental forest north of Bangor. Because this disease causes decline and mortality of American beech, it is a significant threat to the wildlife dependent on this tree for food and shelter. Symptoms of the disease include dark bands between the leaf veins and leathery curled leaves. These symptoms are visible year-round, and we appreciate your observations of this disease. 2 other new detections in Maine were the southern pine beetle and the Sirex or European woodwasp, both in York County. The southern pine beetle was found in traps in Waterboro, Maine, as a result of a University of New Hampshire research project. Other sites trapped in Maine didn't uncover any evidence of additional populations. However, it appears that southern pine beetle has established here in Maine. A second insect pest of pines, particularly hard pines, the Sirex woodwasp, was recovered from barrels where eastern white pine trap logs had been kept to rear out insects that had attacked the logs after felling. 2 adult specimens were recovered after 2 years in the barrel. The good news about both of these pests is that impacts to our forests can be reduced through active forest management. Healthy trees are able to resist attack from both southern pine beetle and the European woodwasp. When I started my career in forest health, I never thought I'd be worried about earthworms, but here I am. European earthworms have been in our forests for hundreds of years in settled places, as well as having been moved to other locations through human activities. We think of earthworms as good, aerating the soil, freeing up nutrients, providing food. However, our forests aren't adapted to their presence, and they do have negative impacts to forest health. In addition, Asian origin worms called jumping worms have exploded in numbers recently throughout the Northeast. They reproduce more rapidly than their European cousins and churn through the soil like wildfire through slash. They can quickly turn the soil into loose, coffee ground-like material and lead to poor rooting and soil erosion. Both types of earthworms can lead to lower plant diversity, loss of protective leaf litter, exposure of tree roots, soil compaction, and loss of nutrients. These conditions can make invasive plant species even more successful in the forest environment. In order to help stop new introductions of worms to the forest, we recommend that you arrive clean and leave clean. Clean soil and debris from vehicles, equipment, and gear before moving to and from one work area to another one to prevent further introductions. Shifting gears again, we saw a massive but harmless dispersal of hemlock woolly adelgid in June of 2021. The bad news is it is indicative of epic populations of this pest in prior years. Folks may remember the news stories of something staining beachgoers' feet black. The stain, it turns out, came from pigments in the bodies of bazillions of winged hemlock woolly adelgids that washed ashore. The picture in the lower right shows water off the coast of Massachusetts, covered with the adelgid carcasses, many of which made their way to shore and colored the beaches of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and southern Maine. Mild low winter temperatures for a number of years contribute to low winter mortality of hemlock woolly adelgid. In general, hemlock woolly adelgid needs more than 90% mortality in order to maintain stable populations over winter. If overwintering mortality is below that threshold, then the populations grow, and if it's above that threshold, then the populations decline. These successive years of low mortality likely led to very dense populations of hemlock woolly adelgid, triggering the spring 2021 populations to produce winged adults. In native Japan, these adults would fly to tiger tail spruce. In North America, they are a dead end. It's likely this massive population buildup also contributed to spread of hemlock woolly adelgid in the region in the years before 2021. To date, that hasn't showed up in surveys or public reports. Last year, all new sightings were either in areas where hemlock woolly adelgid was previously detected or in towns adjacent to prior detections. Please keep your eyes peeled for this pest when you're working in hemlock and let us know if you think you've found it. Also, remember there's a quarantine on hemlock in a swath along the coast through Hancock County. It impacts movement of rooted hemlock and hemlock branches, both whole and chipped, from that region to areas without hemlock woolly adelgid. And you can see that area covered in blue on this map. If you're working in hemlock, try to concentrate your harvest from August through February, when there is a reduced risk of spreading the pest. From March through July, there may be abundant eggs and crawlers in infested stands. Because all hemlock woolly adelgid are female, only one is needed to start a new population. If you're moving top material, such as branches from a harvest in an infested area, be sure to notify your receivers if they're outside of that quarantine area. If they don't have an agreement to receive the material, they can get one from the Maine Forest Service. Moving on to defoliators, we had some significant caterpillar activity in 2021 and expect each of these species to increase in 2022. First of all, we had over 55,000 acres of damage from what was called gypsy moth prior to 2020 and has just been renamed spongy moth. The name spongy moth refers to the egg mass, which is a good indicator of what to expect for populations. Most defoliation last year was found in Oxford County and in an area around Jay. There are also smaller pockets throughout the southern half of Penobscot County, and we do expect to see these populations increase unless we get significant disease in the caterpillars. If you work outside in some parts of Maine, you're likely familiar with the impacts of brown-tailed moth. The caterpillars have hairs that can cause a painful itchy rash when encountered and difficulty breathing when inhaled. We saw continued expansion of brown-tailed moth in Maine in 2021, with the most heavily impacted areas centered on the capital city. These maps show that even though the most intense populations were in the capital region, brown-tailed moth caterpillars were found into northern Aroostook County, east to Washington County. In fact, they were found in all counties except for York, and in early 2022, we have also found them in York County. This is the biggest outbreak in recent history. We had almost 200,000 acres of damage mapped in 2021 in aerial survey. During the last outbreak, that number peaked at under 11,000 acres of damage mapped. And without significant disease, we expect this population to also continue to build in 2022. Recent work at the University of Maine has suggested that warmer temperatures in August and September are contributing to the buildup of brown-tailed moth populations. In addition, it is confirmed that wetter springs contribute to outbreak collapse. And finally, a familiar native forest pest was noteworthy in 2021 for a couple of reasons. Spruce budworm populations have been slowly building since 2013, with pulses in populations connected with mass transport from the large outbreak in the province of Quebec. In 2020, later instar caterpillars were readily detected in parts of northern Maine. And in 2021, we mapped the first damage in aerial surveys caused by spruce budworm at under 1,000 acres. Also in 2021, the first treatment of spruce budworm using aerially applied BTK was conducted since the first treatment since the collapse of the last outbreak. This was done by a private landowner in northern Aroostook County, following the early intervention strategy developed in the Atlantic provinces of Canada. With all these defoliators and other stressors around, it's worth commenting on forest management during times of stress from abiotic insects or disease agents. Forests may not respond well to stand entries during these times, so it's recommended that harvests be delayed where possible until the stress ends and the forest recovers. Harvesting, although it can be beneficial in the near and long term, it is a stress in the short term. Whenever possible, harvest should happen when forests are healthy. That gives the best chance for a good outcome in tree health and growth. I want to touch on 3 additional complexes before I wrap up. First, always look out for Asian longhorn beetle. This pest hasn't been found in Maine, but there are active populations in Massachusetts, New York, Ohio, and South Carolina, as well as a history of infestation in other areas. Asian longhorn beetle moves well in firewood, and we have a ton of outdoor recreation in Maine associated with the movement of firewood. The insects look similar to the familiar wood chipper or Sawyer beetles, but they are showier, glossy black and white beetles. This slide shows some imposters that people will often mistake for Asian longhorn beetles. They include some of our native longhorn beetles, our showy-eyed click beetle, the broadneck root borer, and the western conifer seed bug, which is familiar in our homes now. The damage from Asian longhorn beetle starts just beneath the bark and progresses towards the center of the tree. Things to look for include broken stems with evidence of tunneling, egg sites, the top arrow on the right photo, and exit holes, the bottom arrow on that right photo. The exit holes are generally perfectly round, and usually there will be more egg niches or egg sites than exit holes. Here's some more photos of damage. They include things like areas of missing bark, tunneling beneath the bark, tunneling within the center of the tree, and those perfectly round exit holes. And you can see the size of those holes. It's about the diameter of a pencil, a little bit bigger than that. This is a Sharpie in the picture put into an exit hole caused by an Asian longhorn beetle. Next up, I want to cover another beetle of Asian origin, the emerald ash borer. Emerald ash borer was detected in Maine in 2018 in 2 locations. First in the north of the state and then in southern Maine. The damage in the south is greater than that in the north. It's associated with the expansion of a large outbreak towards the lake states where emerald ash borer was first detected. In the north, the outbreak is associated with a small detection across the river in Canada. A lot of people, when they learn about emerald ash borer in Maine, want to go right to cutting all of the ash in their stands. And while it is a good idea to not plan on ash to all be there for the long term, we encourage people to not cut all their ash. White ash has been shown to have a highly variable survival rate. And so there is a portion of the population that's resistant to damage or tolerant of damage by emerald ash borer. Keeping smaller diameter ash may slow the spread of the front of emerald ash borer. It'll also help biological control be more effective and keep both ash and ash seed on the landscape as long as possible. There is a state quarantine on emerald ash borer that affects the movement of ash tree material and hardwood firewood. You need an agreement with the Maine Forest Service to legally move that material out of the quarantine area. We also ask that you follow best management practices to help slow the spread of emerald ash borer within quarantine areas. They include things like moving ash short distances, especially during the flight period between May and September, to move roundwood between October 1st and April 30th when possible, to use in-woods chipping if the chip is going to be the final product, and to let people know if the ash they're receiving is a load that came from a regulated area. You can learn more about emerald ash borer on our website at maine.gov/emerald@EAB. You can also participate in monitoring for this pest by creating a track tree. The final complex I would like to cover is European large canker. This is not a new disease in Maine. It was found in Maine in 1981. However, it is a disease that appears to be spreading. There is a quarantine in place for large tamarack and other species of larch, commonly known as juniper here in Maine, and that's because of the presence of European large canker. The quarantine impacts movement of all large material that comes out of the quarantine area, including things like chips. We have seen some evidence of potential spread along the edge of the two quarantine areas of Maine and are sending samples in for confirmation of disease. We expect that the quarantine area will expand, and you can stay up to date by checking our website, maine.gov/foresthealth, or signing up for our newsletters. Our newsletters are called the Conditions Report, and you can sign up for them at maine.gov/foresthealth. We encourage you, if you see something off in the woods, to report it. You can review signs of invasive threats at maine.gov/forestpests. And thank you for your time.